You can't tell me that there's nothing left to do. You can't tell me that there's nothing left in you. 'Cause I still believe the world can live it through. All these pain and grief, there's always hope to hold on to. Just pass right through their eyes. But we can't just forgo the thought of people trying to survive with these oceans of lies, where the sky seems so high. Can we even care to look them in the eyes? Now it's time to
with this faith, we could fly. The world is moving, so should we. Light the sky so they will see. The night is ending near. The night is ending near.
So it's time that we make a stand. Reach out so they'll understand. They've never been alone. We're bound to carry on in this life given to us. Together we will breathe the hope that's in our
It is here, can you see? This love will set us free. Hold on to live and keep this faith so we could fly.
You've never been alone. Now we can carry on in this life given to us. Together we will breathe the hope that's in our here. Now we make a stand. We will reach out. Now you understand. You've never been alone. Now we can carry on
Olas movedizas que te quieren tragar. Mira bajo tus ojos y hay una niebla espesa que no soportas más. Oh, oh, oh. Fíjate entre las calles y ves un río de gente que espera algo de ti. Fíjate si en tu vida ahora ves una fuerza inmensa que crece siempre más. Oh, oh, oh. No mires para atrás, tú has nacido para dar más de ti. Como el fuego es fuego si te abraza, como el agua es agua si te empapa. Tú has nacido para amar, como el aire es aire si respiras, y la luz es luz y te ilumina. Tú has nacido para amar, nacido para amar. Cuídate de las hienas porque ellas hacen la fiesta si vivo no estás tú. Huye de los piratas porque son como tiburones si no los vences tú. Oh, oh, oh. No mires para atrás, tú has nacido para dar más de ti. Como el fuego es fuego si te abraza, como el agua es agua si te empapa. Tú has nacido para amar, como el aire es aire si respiras, y la luz es luz y te ilumina. Tú has nacido para amar, nacido para amar. Como el fuego es fuego si te abraza, como el agua es agua si te empapa. Tú has nacido para amar, como el aire es aire si respiras, y la luz es luz y te ilumina. Tú has nacido para amar, nacido para amar.
Gondoskodás.
Polvoda.
Care.
Proteger.
Забота.
رعاية. Prendre soin.
Ter atenção.
Sorge tragen. Niaisu.
Cuidar.
Aruga.
Curar.
Buonasera, eccoci, siamo in...
So, good evening. We're beginning this meeting that we wanted to entitle A Cry of Justice on the Balkan Route. for an Europe of Peace. That's an initiative that came about in a special way from New City together with Parties for Unity movement. It came about at the on the eve of the conference on the future of Europe. We question ourselves about the future of our continent and the world, and we see projected towards a united world, towards a relationship of brotherhood, because as this song said, we are made to love. So during this year, 2021, we were affected by the images coming from the eastern border of that is from Bosnia, where there are our brothers and sisters who are fleeing from war and poverty, and they knock uselessly at the doors of the EU. Many became aware of these. They got connected to a network of solidarity, but we need to do much more and not to remain indifferent. Last night, during this marathon of the United World Project, there was an initiative on migration that saw the participation of many young people. So we start from the awareness that some young people in a special way from a TV service still from New City that consecrated to the Balkan route a service that introduces us to this topic.
Benvenuti a TG Teens.
Welcome to TG Teens, made by teens that collects news from all over the world. Live, we'll tell stories of teens from all over the world. Today we'll see the experience of people committed for the common good. Let's listen to a girl who wrote a letter to the President Ursula von der Leyen asking for intervention in favor of migrants blocked along the Balkan route. At the beginning of the year, her talking about the Balkan route, and I got to know the desperate situation of migrants who are stuck at the borders of Europe. At Bosnia, they are in extreme poverty and they are often victims of violence. They're exposed to cold. This arose in me a strong need to do something in order to enable to those brothers and sisters to have a better life that all human lives deserve, to have a future and possibilities, also because of the very difficult situations. They flee from war and they lost everything. So at Teens for Unity of the Focolare, we believe that every human being can give their contribution to build a better world. So, as wanted to do something concrete, we decided to take part in fundraising in favor of the volunteers who work on the Balkan route. But we wanted to do something more. At the beginning, I was disappointed by the indifference of the European Union, and I wondered how it was possible that a multitude of human beings was stuck on the road, pushed back from the border without that any authority felt like taking care of them. But then I saw that within the institutions of the civil society, there are many people who work for the common good. And I understood that doing our part also means to have our voice heard by the institutions. So a few weeks ago, I met a person who works with the presidency of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and I thought we could address directly to her a letter to ask her on behalf of the teens for the moment what we expect from the European Union countries. That is, they have the strength to put aside the political and economic issues and welcome the request for asylum of these migrants. It is a very small action, but we are certain that it has its value because it expresses in us our desire to make a more united world, more just world, and can be an inspiration for those who rule and have the power to act and solve these situations. For this edition, that's all. We thank for the beautiful experience they shared with us. And if you want to stay tuned for other experiences, go to teens.cittanova.it or write to our mail, teens@cittanova.it. See you next time for next edition of TG Teens.
Ecco, dalle pagine
So from the website of Città Nuova, we shared from the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021 in a special way that January the 5th, it was the eve of the Feast of the Epiphany. We got connected to Silvia Maraone, who expresses one of the realities of people of goodwill who wanted to make justice and not love. Justice for people, and she works as a reality since 1996 on that territory that very often we ignore. We don't know what happens there. So here she is with us, connected from Bosnia. So we thank her, and we want to ask her, where are we at? So when there is an emotion watching those images, then solidarity begins, but it is over after a short while. So where are we at now? Thank you for your invitation, and I hope that my connection gets stabilized, because recently I got crazy just before the event, but I hope I can remain with you. My name is Silvia Marone from the NGO East Coast Acli, and have been working for many years in a situation of constant emergency, because Bosnia and Herzegovina became a part of the so-called mixed Balkan route starting from 2018. The Balkan route was open in 2015. It exploded in 2015 with almost 1 million people who arrived along this route in that year. For political reasons, this route was officially declared closed after an agreement between Turkey and the European Union in 2016. But as a matter of fact, if I'm here today, and if we continue to work from Greece to Macedonia to Serbia, Montenegro, until here in Bosnia, it is because the problem is not solved and the route is not closed. In fact, to stop migration is impossible. It is a constant, uninterrupted flow which cannot be stopped. So in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we saw that in 2018 we got 72,000 people who found places in the 6 camps that were opened to receive them in this territory by the NGOs for Migration, in the International Organization for Migration. In 2021, we're in May now, and we saw 2,700 new entries, but these numbers are certainly higher than the officially calculated ones. Another important figure is that the migrant population that moves on the route is made up 73% of single men without their families. 19% are families with children. And a very important figure, 8% are foreign unaccompanied minors. So they are less than 18 and they travel on their own, accompanied just by friends or far relatives. In the welcoming centers, and 5 are managed by the International Organization of Migration, there were 4,507 April at the end of 7 people at the end of April, but at least 1,754 people live outside of the official system and out of the camps, but at least there should be 3,000, in fact, according to our calculation. They sleep in abandoned factories, in destroyed houses, and their only target is to reach Croatia and from there continue to reach Slovenia and Italy or Austria. And most people enter in Bosnia and Herzegovina from northeast, from a town called Tuzla, and then they move to Sarajevo, downtown, and then they get to this part through Bihać and Velika Kladusa, because there are 300 kilometers of woods and mountains that separate us from Trieste. The route I do in 4 driving hours. Migrants do it in 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks. What we see is that there are violent methods in police controls by the border police, because the border with Europe is strongly controlled out of a policy of closure that the European Union wanted, so migrants are not welcomed. So we see that there are constant acts of violence. We see people, after doing the so-called game, not only they have broken mobile phones, but they have signs of the sticks of the police. So signs of the police, the violence received from police agents. There is a report that was done by the Danish Refugee Council. And according to this report, at the end of February, it said that 23,153 people had been illegally pushed back from Croatia to Bosnia with the use of strength. This is done by the European police, because Croatia is a country member of the European Union, and everything is under the light of the sun. So which means that the violence that is perpetrated against migrants, the witnesses are gathered and collected and brought to the European Union, to the individual states, but nothing changes. Working with people in Bosnia and Herzegovina enables us to see many needs, and among the many needs we see, some of them are priority. First of all, the conditions of life within the temporary receiving centers and the transit camps. People live within these places, which are very crowded. These official camps are always very crowded. There are not enough toilets, there is not enough food, there is no privacy, there is a lot of noise, it is not clean, there is violence. And at least 1,700 people who live in improvised tents do not have food, they don't have water, they don't have light, they don't have sanitary service, they don't have heating. And especially in the area where I live, at the northwestern border, we are very much worried for the condition of people in transit along the Balkan route. As a consequence, what happens is that there is a widespread psychological distress among people of the different groups of migrant population. So there's a status of insecurity, violence that endangers the health of migrants, and the cases of depression, anxiety, stress among men, women, and children, and foreign minors are on the rise. We see they cut themselves, this autolesionism, then abuse of medical drugs. Drugs are used, and also alcohol, maniacal episodes, depression, so all psychological problems that these people have in the camps and out of the camps. Another big problem is healthcare assistance, because we calculated there are at least 9,000 people in the country, refugees. No monitoring, no prevention, COVID prevention is done with them, and despite the agreement between the Bosnia and the organizations that pay for healthcare expenses, hospitals do not accept those people. So very hardly people are taken care in the right way, and we see that hygienic conditions bring other diseases, despite the standard diseases that people can have that can be more or less serious. We see also an increase of dermatological problems and a widespread of COVID. Another big problem is the attitude of the local population towards these migrants. We see that many people arrive with a good season. We see more and more people are arriving from Serbia, from Montenegro to Bosnia, but there are no beds in the camps, and a very confused and unorganized system of the Bosniak state, very disorganized, so that from the Bosnian state, so that the presence of migrants out of the camps is very high. This means that the population, especially in the city of Bihać, is very much against the presence of migrants in this area. So through some political groups or the local media, we feed hatred towards these people, marginalization, exclusion, and that worsen, even worse, the conditions. Then there are two more points I wanted to make. On the one hand, there is, they forbid the migrants to move freely. So with the pretext of COVID, the cantonal government of Unasana has forbidden migrants to move in the region, so they have to get down from the buses when they get from Sarajevo, and to do the way in a hidden way, and they cannot go around in the cities. According to the politicians of Unasana canton, migrants must be only in the camps, so as if it was a prison. And then another very important thing is that I already mentioned, that 8% of this population is made up of children not taken care of, because unaccompanied children, 12 to 17 years old, and these children who are, the families let them leave the country of origin so that they could escape from the Taliban who wanted to exploit them in the army, or children have to behave like adults eventually. So they travel with traumas from the country of origin, and they suffer other traumas during their whole journey, so that their mental health is very much at risk. And personally working in a context characterized by permanent crisis and conflict between the hosting population and the population in transit is not easy. We don't see solutions, we don't see perspectives, so that the most concerning thing is living every day by working in its context in the official refugee camps or with the people outside the camps without having a direction. And this because the Bosniak state is very fragile, very weak, and very corrupted. So nobody wants the responsibility of these people in transit, so that there are no structures that can welcome them, there are no places that want them, so it is really a loss of hope towards humanity, the one that we are living every day in this place. It is very hard. It's very hard to find the words of hope for the families, for the traveling people, and respond to the question, answer to the question why Europe and specifically police does that when they get back from the game, and also from Slovenia or from Italy. So we always have to find the strength in order to give answers and act in such a way that that we search for some solution, even if nothing is changed in the last 3 years since the migration began in this area. We really hope that the welcoming, receiving system can change, the Bosniak state can take up its responsibility, but until then we are here to bring messages of hope and closeness to the people in transit. Thank you. Thank you, Silvia, also because that shows the fact that we are in front of a presidium of humanity and solidarity by an Italian association, so it's like a permanent assembly. And by getting connected with the social pages of the ACLI, on BHATCH, we have the possibility of having a real-time update, so we know the stories, we know what is happening. At the same time, we wonder, Europe is paying to stop and leave this land, which is so much marked recently by history. I'm talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina by a war. So we say so many times that a war is not there in Europe. There's no war, and we forget that former Yugoslavia is part of Europe. As a consequence, the signs of the violence, of the contradictions that so far we didn't take our responsibility about that also as Italy. So that marks people, so we cannot put the problems of migration and discharge them on the local population. So from Bosnia, Tamara, who is part and works in the area of NGOs like CISL ISCOS, and at this moment she is in Italy, in Reggio Emilia. We already had a meeting with her. We got to know her experience, and we wondered what we could do out of solidarity, but they are on the border. They have a strict connection with those who are not indifferent. So Tamara will give us her intervention in English.
I will speak in English for the rest of the speech. Let's say, unfortunately, situation and the reality of the so-called Balkan route, as Silvia also mentioned on the beginning, is not present from the 22nd December last year, 2020. It's present last 6 years, and this is 6 years that we are speak about so-called Balkan route. It's very important to underline that Bosnian and Herzegovinian society, very fragile, also 25 years after the war, society of trauma, PTSD, but also very low and very weak governmental institutional sector that is spread all around. And I think as a Bosnian Herzegovinian, in my personal opinion, I think that is the biggest problem. We are facing very divided entities and very divided state of responsibilities among let's say sectors and governmental parts in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Second thing that it's very important to underline and to emphasize, it's that it's not allowed to help the people on the move. It's you are breaking the law if you are helping people on the move, especially in the entity of Republika Srpska, unfortunately. Nobody speaks about pushbacks from the part of Herzegovina. There are the part close to the border with Montenegro, from the side of the police of Republika Srpska back to the part of the Montenegro. There are thousands and thousands of families, especially children with their mothers and fathers in this period in the forest and mountains around Pljevlja, the city, very small city on the border between Montenegro and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So to speak about situation and also to emphasize, but also to bring this topic more in the present and among the citizens, let's say, we decided at ISCOS network, supported by CISL and ALNOV, to create an awareness campaign, and to speak about problems in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Montenegro, in Serbia, also other countries on the so-called Balkan route. And I think that somehow we also can feel the presence of the fear of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian people in this moment. I don't want to say that we are fear of the situation with the people on the move, but we have a fear of unknown that is coming. And unfortunately, the current situation, the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's not something that we need to be proud of. For example, we are aware that even though international standards and norms which are targeting human rights had been prolific, the progress regarding their implementation has been so far insufficient. And we can say that we have so many conventions, so many resolutions and treaties that speak about human rights, but unfortunately in this moment, we cannot see their results. And I'm afraid somehow, and tomorrow it's the Day of Europe, 9th May, it's something that we really need to question constantly. I will just somehow emphasize and underline why ISCOS, with all partners international, but also with trade union CISL, decide to address an appeal and let's say resolution, not only among the trade unions, but among other citizens in Italy and international and also in Europe. It's the idea to speak about the situation that are very crucial in this moment, the problems that are passing and that people on the move are dealing with. To end any kind of physical and psychological violence that people on the move suffer daily at several levels. And in that moment, with that idea, with support of our volunteers and our colleagues in the local and also international organization, local NGOs, but also the journalists, the people who are present constantly on the Balkan route, we consider to urge to put on the list of paper and try also to address to the different national, governmental, and other structure. I will underline some of them, and some of them are to start procedures for the evacuation of the persons blocked, voluntary or involuntary, in formal and informal camps, jungles, and spots, including by the opening of humanitarian corridors and forms of international protection, to promote any initiative of European and national support, and to encourage to develop ordinary and widespread forms of reception throughout the area. That the Italian institution, local levels of course included, and the European institution do everything in their power to ensure that the authorities of the countries involved do not harass or intimidate NGOs and international organizations or volunteers, because we are facing a big numbers of the harassment when we speak about volunteers in the local journalists and other members of the NGO among the Balkan route. The provisions governing these organizations working in assistance of people on the move and migrants do not hamper their activities. To establish as soon as possible independent monitoring systems and procedures to verify impartially what is happening inside the camps, in the border territories, and the border control procedures themselves, especially targeting Frontex and new treaty between Frontex and Balkan countries 2 months ago. That the Italian government clarifies immediately what is happening on its borders and strictly monitors and possibly censors the procedures of the readmissions and of migrants between Italy, Slovenia, and Croatia. Any violence committed during these procedures and the pushbacks from these countries to Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, that it effectively protects the right of access to the asylum procedures by EU law and the Geneva Convention. The European Commission clarifies and informs the European Parliament about the pushbacks involving one more of its member states. To create sustainable asylum system based and shared together on responsibility and with the rights and solidarity placed at the center, as almost also provided for in Article 80 of the Treaty on the EU's functioning. This shall include an appropriate reform of the Dublin regulation and overcoming the responsibility of the country of the first entry of evaluation of the applications. That foreign citizens be guaranteed access to information and the possibility to apply for the international protection at the border, also by making use of the work of qualified organizations and associations. To invite all local institutions, regions, trade unions, and political parties to adopt the resolutions, motions, and agendas intend to ask the Italian government for answers on what is happening along the Balkan route, and also in this way, a real action designed to reshape the migration policies from the grassroots level shall take place democratically, that shall finally lead to actual recognition of people's rights and the termination of the physical and, of course, I think, second important, psychological violence against those who are currently trapped at the borders. And to conclude maybe this part for the first round of the interventions, this is very similar. This situation along the Balkan route is very similar what happened in Yugoslavia 26 years ago. And me as a peace builder, I urge to react and act as soon as possible, because unfortunately we will face a situation that we are facing now. For example, we will have a new Gaza in Europe, we will have a second Srebrenica, or we will have any other concentration camps all around the Bosnia and Herzegovina during the 90s. And I think the paradox and of this situation is when the ex-camp survivors in Bosnia and Herzegovina announced that the situation where they see now the people on the move is the worse than the situation during the 90s, during the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
Grazie a te per questa testimonianza, anche per il legame forte che esiste proprio.
Thank you for this witness and the strong link that there is with the area in which you are and the initiative that your organization Iskos Chisla is carrying forward. As far as Italy is concerned and the areas of welcome and exclusion, of course, what is precious is the experience of the Papa Giovanni community. Specifically, we have always linked up with Laila Simoncelli, who has told us about the presence in the island of Lesbos as to what is happening in that island in Greece. We are now connected with Laura Collina, who is going to speak to us from Shkodër in Albania. Over to you, Laura.
Grazie. Sono Laura Collina, referente dell'ambito.
Thank you very much, Laura Collina. I am the point of reference of the migration dimension of Papa Giovanni XXIII community. We have always been in the first line in welcoming persons who are migrating, responding concretely to the words of the gospel, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. In Italy, following the increase of migration flows, many structures are in place for asylum seekers. Our families, our family homes and welcoming families have always opened their doors to minor and adult migrants as well as to whole families. Many hundreds of people have been welcomed over these years. The Giovanni XXIII community, starting in 2015, so immediately as soon as the Balkan route became open, decided to mobilize both in Macedonia and in Serbia with voluntary missions as a sign of solidarity, reporting and witness. As a community, Giovanni XXIII, we could not remain static before the cry of these people who are escaping from their countries in order to save their life. And we have always felt the need to report violence and any violation of human rights vis-à-vis the migrants, and to ask institutions to re-examine the migration phenomena, both as Catholic networks and as a national asylum think tank. Speaking directly to Europe with our proposal, the Europe we believe in, and the United Nations with our delegation, in order to be the voice of those who do not have a voice. Between 2020 and 2021, a range of journeys took place to Lesbos and to mainland Greece. This is the first stage of the Balkan route, where we have been present since 2014, and Bihać, as well as Trieste in Italy. Along with volunteers from local associations, borderline areas have been examined between Italy and Slovenia in order to understand what the life of migrants was like, what the dangers, the sufferings were, and to act through networks of solidarity. In the middle of March 2021, a journey was undertaken along with other associations to Bihać and the surrounding areas. Thanks to a range of associations, it was possible to contribute to alleviate the suffering of men, women, and children. And this last journey has allowed us to establish acquaintances and to visit and monitor the various official and unofficial asylum centers, as well as to get to know the faces of many suffering people. Before a humanitarian crisis of such dimensions, in our view as Papa Giovanni Association, the inertia of the European and national associations is truly scandalous. In as far as the Balkan route monitoring activities are concerned, of which we are part, we are setting up a coordination task force in order to coordinate and to respond to this crisis. We are trying to witness and raise awareness in public spaces to make people aware of how the fields work and what the route is, with the involvement of many young people. We have prayer vigils in parishes, collect materials and funds. In our view, it is necessary to keep the attention high on this tragedy so it won't disappear from the media. For the Giovanni XXIII community, it is absolutely paramount that alongside the dimension of humanitarian aid and solidarity, we need the mobilization of the European legal framework. We all need to mobilize vis-à-vis the violation of fundamental rights along the borders. As Papa Giovanni Association, we wish to remove the causes of injustice, and at a human rights level, it is unacceptable that thousands of people are denied the right to ask for political asylum in Europe. Therefore, the policy of pushback is heavily condemned, as well as the criminalization of solidarity, and we ask for the immediate ceasing of violence on the part of the border authorities. The European Union needs to guarantee fundamental human rights by deploring such praxis and taking on the responsibilities of what is happening. The quick evacuation and controlled evacuation of migrants in unacceptable conditions need to be guaranteed. We need to open humanitarian corridors for the most vulnerable strata of migrant population, and recollocation needs to follow. Papa Giovanni is active in Greece and in Lebanon, exactly in creating humanitarian corridors, and we hope that these, which are now in the hands of private associations, become a new European mechanism. This is why we commit, along with many others, and we're sure we will be able to make it. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Very decisive words coming about from life and concrete commitment on what happens on our frontiers. We should have to shout these out. As the title of this meeting says, we try to speak slowly and calmly, but the substance is a cry. One of the questions we had on YouTube on the part of Leluki, who is from Pisa, says, did somebody respond to the girl Sole with regard to that report she made? As far as we know, the European Union is very kind and responds to all European citizens. There had been many letters sent about the Balkan route, but specifically there recently was, I think yesterday, a direct meeting was broadcast with the president of the European Parliament, David Sassoli, and in order to represent Italy and the political movement for unity, Chiara Ungo was with us, and in the light of what the representative of Papa Giovanni has just said, we are trying to develop together a clear appeal which is addressed to Europe, specifically to the European Parliament. Maria Chiara Muro will say something about herself, and she will also tell us what this is about. Thank you very much.
Non si sente, purtroppo c'è una banda.
Unfortunately, we cannot hear the speaker at this time.
Riprova a parlare.
Mi sentite?
Adesso sì.
Perfetto. No, ringraziavo intanto.
Thank you. I was thanking all those who have spoken before me. I'm Maria Chiara, and today in your company I represent the political movement for unity. I am Italo-Rwandan, and I am part of the communication team of MPPU, and I am studying for a degree of international politics and rights. I was born in 1994 in Rwanda, in those months when the genocide was happening, the one that caused more than 1 million victims. Therefore, we had to escape with our family, and we arrived in Italy in 1995 after the status of political refugees had been recognized. So for clear reasons, the theme we are delving into today is very dear to me. During my studies, I tried to specialize on issues linked to migration, with a specific focus on European policies pertaining to this topic. Yesterday, as Carlo said, to mark the campaign Dare to Care, I was able to see the opportunity to hold a conversation with the President of the European Parliament, David Sassoli, and to ask him a question regarding the issue of migration, and specifically the intentions of Europe in order to respond with efficacy to this emergency. The President confessed, and I found it interesting, to be discouraged because Europe does not have the appropriate tools to respond to this emergency. The European institutions work for reformulation of the Dublin regulations, but up to the point where we begin to see cooperation between states, we will not be able to implement a functional plan. But entering into the conversation as MPPU, Politics for Unity movement, we would like to present an appeal to the European Union, which we are working on. Like Silvia, Tamara and Laura said, the Balkan route is the route of refugees who are escaping conflicts, hunger, poverty, and non-existent health care and sanitary conditions. Therefore, they need support, and they should find in all the countries of the area a context of welcome, assistance, and legal protection. Instead, the opposite take place in all the countries, including the countries of the European Union, from the Turkish-Greek border to Italy. unacceptable policies have been put into place through illegal pushbacks, the refusal to supply safeguarding and access to arrival structures, arbitrary detention, sending people into camps in conditions of extreme degradation, and the total lack of measures for the social inclusion of asylum seekers and those who are entitled to safeguard and protection. Therefore, we ask European members of parliament an immediate action to change this unacceptable situation, acting on a range of levels, starting from building a coordination group which mirrors the plurality of the European population and which is able to share the need to carry out monitoring missions along the Balkan route, aimed naturally at the control, at monitoring the respect for human rights, which are enshrined in international agreements and in EU legal framework. This includes destination countries and transit countries in order to monitor control flows and borders, so no disproportionate use of funds for the control of migration flows takes place, hindering the rights of foreign citizens, and the strengthening of welcome systems of third-party countries. This implies also opposing funding to projects which do not guarantee respect for international law and EU law in terms of asylum and safeguarding. As far as proposals are concerned, we posit the need to reform the directive on repatriation to avoid these policies becoming an excuse for states not to record asylum requests, to create sustainable asylum systems which are based on the principle of responsibility and equal sharing of responsibilities, and a relocation program from the Balkan areas that do not belong to the Union, in order to avoid that these countries are overwhelmed and stretched beyond their possibilities. But aside from this, it is crucial that these issues, these projects are strengthened, and this is to guarantee adequate standard of welcome and safeguard of refugees. What we hope is that a range of measures are put into place in order to radically change this situation, which we believe is unacceptable. Thank you for your attention.
So we listened to these intention of attitude we want to take up together, especially with all the realities that are active in Italy and on international level, for an action that should involve, first of all, the European Parliament as a democratic expression of the European Union. And we have with us, it's difficult to find members of Parliament who are available, not only those who think in a way or another, but the fact of talking and taking up the responsibility of this relationship. So we are very grateful of the presence of Bertrand Kostner. She will speak in German, and we want to listen to her.
Ja, vielen Dank für die Einladung. Als Europaabgeordneter halte ich es.
Thank you for your invitation. As a European Member of Parliament, I feel my duty to take part in this kind of events. So I want to thank the organizers for this event, because you give the opportunity that this humanitarian crisis is
Veränderungen auch.
inserted in the agenda, and that's an important step in order to change things, and it is important that you address this request also to us, members of Parliament, of the European Parliament. But, you know, as members of Parliament on our own, we cannot solve the problem. The European Union, in fact, as a mechanism, it is done in such a way that eventually we always need the consensus of the member states in order to find a solution and carry out these solutions. In the European Parliament, we already made resolutions where solidarity was a central point, and we emphasized that the states where the refugees get to cannot be left on their own. And the refugees should be distributed also in solidarity among the 27 member states. But there are states who refuse to even talk about this topic. That is why I have to make pressure on the institutions, on the EU, and it's important to do it in the individual states, on your own government. I want to give you an example. The German state with our Chancellor Merkel, she speaks in a very positive way of the care of and the way to protect the frontiers, and also this protection of frontiers is spoken of in a very positive way. We all know about the violent acts of the Croatian authorities, and these in Germany brought to discussion of increasing pressure on national governments in order not to support the Croatian government in this action. But we repeat more and more that it is important to protect our external frontiers, and Frontex is being reinforced, and Frontex agents are armed. They must be armed, and we are very much concerned about this. And as European members of Parliament, we emphasize more and more that first, we cannot talk only about protecting borders, but protecting people should be our driver. European Union is not only an economic union, it is a union of values, and these values are destroyed, and we emphasize that this is not right. But with our requests, people do not listen to us. With those who take care of human rights, I made a journey to Bosnia and Herzegovina. I went to UNASANA, and our working group went there in 2019. And already in 2019, the situation was very concerning. The situation in the camps, as has already been described, there is no privacy. The refugees are depressed. They suffer of psychological distress, and we had the opportunity to talk to some refugees who had suffered violence from the police, and they were forced to leave their clothes. They were forcibly undressed, and that's a strong violation of human rights. And this was emphasized that it is a crime that cannot be accepted. It is a strong humanitarian crisis, and the European Union should be careful not to lose their credibility. Because if you look at human rights, the European Union cannot protect human rights with the poor the poorest, it means it loses its very basic values, and the European project would fail. So eventually, it is very important to put this into light. At the border between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia, we have an area which is outlaw. The law is absent there, and the institutions do not look at the law that should guarantee asylum. And this situation brings to something that has nothing to do with lawfulness. The rights of refugees are totally not considered, and it is a situation without dignity that the refugees are living. They showed me the wounds, the signs of the violence they suffered by the Croatian police. So this request you addressed to us as European members of Parliament is very just, and I want to support it. I want to encourage it. And it will be supported by many members of Parliament. But as I said, the member states must play their part. And very often they block what we want to do, and eventually they are responsible for the humanitarian crisis we see in those areas. The European Union has approved, has tried to react with money allocation in this situation. In total, 85 million euro were made available, were allocated, and also 1 more million euro. But as members of Parliament, we don't know where this money goes, and if this money was really given to the refugees or not. And we already said that Bosnia-Herzegovina is a post-war state. We spoke to the mayor of Bihać and with the Minister of Interior of the Croatian Republic, and we heard from them contradictory assertions, and also the different levels, the political levels in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they don't work. In the discussion we had as members of Parliament with the Minister of Interior of Croatia, we tried to ask explanation about the violence, about the violation of human rights and the acts of violence by the Croatian police. And the minister answered, no, it is not true. He denied. So we criticized him, and he said that it is not true, that these are all lies. So for us, this is very, very important. It is important to, we want to write a report on the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, also to describe the situation, the condition under which Bosnia and Herzegovina could possibly enter the European Union, and I'm involved in this. We ask for independent mechanisms to be there of vigilance and control over what happens there along the borders in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is absolutely needed because even if it is obvious and visible, the violence is visible there, the Croatian authorities lie. They say, they deny, they say it is not true that they violate the law and that these practices are not committed, these crimes are not committed by their police. To conclude my statement, I want to emphasize that We cannot just blame the government of Croatia or Bosnia and Herzegovina, because the responsibility is also of the European Union, because the problem of the refugees who want to be excluded by the EU wants to exclude them, and this policy of externalization and marginalization brings to the fact that human rights are not respected any longer, and also the right of asylum is eventually cancelled. So we should try to make pressure to the member states within each national member state in order to avoid the situation and to improve the situation. And in some European cities, there are initiatives that come out of the municipalities, and we cannot just remain there and look from outside. Many cities themselves say they are safe harbors, and they are ready to welcome people, but the Minister of Interior blocks the situation. And I think the European Union, with 400 million inhabitants, it should be easy to receive 9,000 refugees who are at the moment in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but the political will to have a humane policy of migration is absent. So we always go back to this point. It is not only a point of tools that are lacking, instruments that are lacking, but the solidarity is lacking among the member states in Europe. In Europe, in the European Union, we discuss about a new Dublin Treaty, a renewal of the Dublin Treaty, and we hope we can get to a better solution, because there again, it is always the member states who say no. And it is important that there is an action even outside the parliament that can show that makes visible the situation. And I think that NGOs have a very important role to play, because they do so much work, so much of what the European Union is supposed to do, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it is not acceptable that those who work so much for human rights and for a human life of the refugees are then criminalized, and they are accused of working with those who help to take the refugees in Europe, bring the refugees in Europe. So I hope that you could follow the translation of this intervention, and we'll put it on the website of New City. And there is a need to speak many languages, and they say the same thing. So we are very much dismayed in front of the present reality, and much noise was done on the lack of respect of the protocol in the meeting of Ursula von der Leyen with Erdogan. But the problem is that we were renewing the agreement with Turkey, and with the army, we have the agreements with Turkey about remaining in the violation of rights, and so there is a responsibility respective to the government and the color of the government, and what is the kind of management of the council. So there is an action most of the time, and the population thinks that they cannot do much, but we have a great experience, a diplomacy that comes from the territory, from proximity, from the capability to get together and give a response. In this sense, it is very important. It is a point of reference, and we can follow these, also considering the common instance that we are really capable of bringing this ahead, and we want to do this in a more decided way, not to stop the immediate solidarity that comes from Parma. In Parma, there is a special experience because the local administration has a high awareness, and also there is a beautiful experience, widespread experience of solidarity of civil society. So we have with us two representatives from Parma, so I give the floor to them to tell us this story that could be paradigmatic of a more widespread commitment. We had also an experience of Bologna, so Emilia-Romagna is really strong in this. A greeting and thanks to all of you who have invited us and who listen to us. I'm Dario Copazzi, and I am a minority municipal councillor with the Democratic Party. In the winter of 2021, we assisted to the scandal of humanitarian emergency in the camp of Lipa in Bosnia, with men, women and children blocked in the freeze and needing indeed for a first assistance. A camp that was added to the many already existing one and to all places of refugees in the area. Even Italy, unfortunately, maintained an attitude of lack of welcoming, often applying the unacceptable system of informal pushback at the border that was eventually declared illegitimate by the judges, by the magistrates. The visit to the refugee camps with many obstacles by a group of European members of Parliament of the Democratic Party was another further denunciation vis-à-vis the situation. And the good thing is what the media gave emphasis to the problem of inhuman condition of the refugees in full winter that were blocked between four pushing back countries. I realized that for driving hours away from my home, a tragedy was happening, an injustice that I, in conscience, as a politician, I could not avoid to respond, trying to find solutions in any possible way. One evening in January, with my colleague Sandro Campanini, with whom I work in the Municipal Council, we made a phone call and we shared this feeling and this political will to do something serious, something effective for those people, using the institutional instruments available. So we thought that the responsibility could not be discharged on the association of the third sector that already act and that are always in the first line in welcoming. It was a political topic. We chose as a topic the municipal motion to be brought to the council in Parma. We entitled it Emergency of Asylum Seekers and Refugees on the Balkan Route, with the aim of asking for a non-formal commitment by the municipality vis-à-vis the need to stimulate the European and national institutions to a new strategy of welcoming and support the activities of assistance in the camps, but especially the need to open channels of reception and humanitarian corridors. We thought it was very important to insert these aspects in the motion, try a welcoming in our city, or rich city, even small groups of people. So to make proclaims remains sterile. To welcome strong political acts, if you do it with individuals and with a meeting with the community. We need to witness concretely that we have to welcome and we must welcome. Refugees have rights only if we recognize our duties, our obligations vis-à-vis them. The motion was approved with a wide majority in municipal council meeting of February the 1st without opposition votes. Following this approval, the president of the municipal council and the council commission of social affairs of the province, and the president of the province convened to promote an institutional commission on this topic, and many representatives of associations that are committed on the front of solidarity and welcoming took part in this. In the following days, the network of associations for welcoming of Parma, and in a while we'll hear its president, Emilio Rossi, relaunched to everyone, public bodies and civil society, this issue, starting from our motion through a public appeal. The objective of the appeal of this association, CIAC, is to make aware politicians, institutions, and civil society so that we can tackle the problem in a new way, and also to find concrete ways to welcome here people coming from the camps. Until now, many people responded, including 270 municipalities belonging to the network of solidarity municipalities. As underwriters and promoters, we got in touch with many national realities of other cities that are dealing with this topic, organizing online meetings, and took part in meetings promoted by others. We think it's important to create a political network of municipalities that adhere to the welcome of refugees. And this network can be a voice that can be heard in Rome and even in Europe. Next week, for example, we'll have a meeting with the mayors that adhere to in the province of Parma. Even slightly improved the situation of Lipa camp, there are still many problems, and we heard them. And the event has shown even once more the seriousness of the situation along the Balkan route. We see that Europe tends to push back the migrants from its borders and make permanent the camps of reception that should be only provisional. But we have to remember that when we talk about Europe, we are not talking about an abstract entity, a body, but a responsibility. Besides the responsibility of the European Commission, the responsibility of the individual states. Member states that still do not elaborate a common strategy despite the appeal of the European Parliament and the hundreds of associations and expressions of civil society and millions of European citizens. This is why we as local politicians will feel the burden of this situation, and today we are happy to share it with you. So thanks to all, and thanks to CIAC that on migration always made a difference both in Parma and in the rest of Italy. And thank you to New City, Città Nuova, that always keeps high the attention and makes a network.
Ecco Emilio, grazie Emilio Rossi come presidente di CIAC che ci racconta questo percorso.
Emilio Rossi, who is the president of CIAC, who will talk to us about this. Thanks to all of us. So, Emilio Rossi, hello everyone. The chain of thought which I would like to start from goes back to that motto, which is to think globally and act locally. So I tried to put together the problems, the responsibilities, and the opportunities to act. And this pertains to us who live in these areas. And I'm trying to put together these elements by saying that in Europe, everybody thought that the war between Mexico and the United States was an unacceptable symbol of egoism. However, in the recent decades, we have seen walls being built in Europe as well. We thought that we could identify the cause in the exasperated nationalism of some European countries, but this is not enough, perhaps. Then we found out about the camps to block migrants that the entirety of Europe was creating along the borders. The information was hidden by the media before this. We needed to go and look for them in the humanitarian websites, humanitarian organization websites, but then suddenly these items of information would explode when disasters took place. For example, when the fire took place in Moria, September 2020. the public opinion realized that Europe was building concentration camps and therefore abdicating to her history, her law, and her culture. And indignation followed against this Europe. Therefore, I proceeded my conversation by moving close in time. So the Legal Studies Association on Migration, ARGI, won an appeal against the Italian Minister of Interior. The Italian police is operating illegally by pushing back towards the fields in Bosnia those who are asking for protection. This is in violation of the Italian law, the Italian constitution, and the fundamental Charter of the European rights of human rights at the European Union. This is what the tribunal says. So Italy has an active role in the production of these camps. At the beginning of the year, there were numerous mobilizations at a grassroots level, and many deliberations were echoed on the part of local organizations expressing dissent. This was aimed at the Italian government. So responsibilities are moving closer and closer to us. We reach the local organizations and us, the citizens living locally. As citizens, we are often organized in associations committed to peace and for the recognition of human rights to all, for international solidarity, and no more accepting to be exonerated and relieved of this responsibility. It is time to take this on. Which opportunities exist locally? Civil society and its association can raise its voice by placing pressure and offering cooperation with the closest government agency, that is the municipality. This reproduces that same mechanism from bottom up, which 20 years ago encouraged Italy to have a national public service for asylum seekers and refugees, which did not exist beforehand. So what can the municipality do? Activate humanitarian corridors. In the letter to the municipality of Parma, we proposed a trustworthy working group which already had acted in Bosnia with legal skills as well as healthcare skills in organizing the arrival of people. The municipality can commit to ensure that there is a permanent entry based on medical needs, as per important programs which have existed for some time in the Emilia-Romagna region, and pursuant to Article 36 of the text on migration, the municipality can sign invitation letters and guarantee letters similar to those underwritten by private individuals. This is the most agile way because it does not go via Rome, that is, via the Italian Home Office. And it is with these letters of invitation and guarantee that between 93 and 97 it was possible to welcome in Parla young objectors of conscience from former Yugoslavia or deserters. The letters were signed on behalf of the municipality of Parma, and this was the councillor to social services. Those invitation letters are still active, and they are the same. The same form hasn't changed over time, and they are still being used at our various embassies. Of course, we need a statement of will on the part of the municipality, because we could never expect the Ministry of Interior to organize protected arrivals nor to facilitate them. Therefore, the possibility to act and cooperate is back in the hands of citizens and local agents, and at the end, every citizen will be able to verify if and how their mayor wishes to dissociate him or herself from the idea of existence of concentration camps for migrants. We wrote a letter to the municipality of Parma, which quickly floated beyond our municipality borders, collecting many adherents, and it continues to have a great following in Italy. And this seems very interesting to us. It is something which can be done easily and all over. Thank you.
Emilio ci ha dato Emilio Rossi per la grande esperienza, io penso proprio questa.
Emilio Rossi gave us this great experience, this link which comes from the opposition to war, the possibility to give hospitality to those who were refusing to go to war. It is a common action, and we stop feeling this impotence, this lack of sovereignty on the part of citizens who say that the government has decided this, even if the government is part of your own party and enables us to undertake action. The question is whether we can do this together. So the links that have come about in the various proposals, we need to understand whether these can be implemented together. As Marichiara Murak said, and other ambits such as MPPU has that kind of ambition to bring forward a politics of fraternity. This is real, it is possible. There is another way to live in this world. There is the ability to give a response which is not simply indifference before evil, and therefore we just look some other way because we don't want to know what happens and it's too painful and there's nothing we can do anyway. Or we can have an impact. There should be no differences before humanity crying. There should be no difference in belonging. This should be a common endeavor. This is why we don't appeal to municipalities in a rhetorical way, but so that this can be a common pathway. We wish to update this conversation and give ourselves the opportunity to continue this. At the same time, in this long marathon of the Week for a United World, we've had a range of appointments, one with Città Nuova concerning the abolition of nuclear weapons. This is an initiative we launched in Italy to support what is happening at the national coalition level, because we have nuclear bombs on our land. At the same time, that of vaccination common good, which was launched today at 2 p.m. And this took place through a round table. And this too is an itinerary for a common initiative, because it is also on the agenda following the announced position statement on the part of America, the hammering indication that Pope Francis gives us for the internationalism of vaccine, the fact that there should be a free and universal access to all in this situation of pandemic, and the need for a common action which is well founded. And for this reason, the meeting which will take place on the 20th of May at 1300 hours Central Europe time. There is a concrete action which is being defined and will be announced, which is concrete towards those areas where vaccines struggle to reach, where we need an intervention which goes beyond. This is always popular diplomacy, these strong links which become established, and where a relationship has come about with the Barco Papa Francisco in Paraná in Brazil, the floating hospital, where an action of solidarity and support has come about, which will be defined during these days. These are concrete examples of how we can generate a different kind of response to the simple acceptance of whatever it is, whatever happens. And there are different ways, for example, the meeting of young people and migrants, what listening to others means. We have listened to various witnesses tonight, concrete proposals, and soon there will be the Genrosso concert. I was listening to Valerio Gentile of Genrosso. We know that this music group have a direct connection with what happens in Croatia and Eastern Europe. They wish to go directly and be with migrants, and they want to be present with art and the ability to move closer to this in all ways and to give a common response. We are not alone in this vision. There is an answer coming from various sources in various ways. We can build this together, and especially we can say that there are many dimensions which need to link up with one another and become a network. So we continue this relations with our friend Costa, all parliamentarians, and those who express an awareness, but we need to be able to speak to everyone and therefore to create a common awareness. And this calls us to be a common awareness and to continue with this path, which we call a path of unity with great ambition. And so we thank our interpreters, we thank the control room, we thank the great courtesy of the interpreters and everybody who has connected up with us. The site will remain open. This recording will remain as a witness in order to become the source of the different initiatives. And we greet you with a great availability. All our contacts are open to you in order to continue this conversation, because despite the end of the enthusiasm of this time together, we can continue our path. This is what Silvia said at the beginning. This is a dimension even where things seem never to change since 1996 through war, through any contradiction, yet they are still there. This faith in service is a guarantee of the ability to give a common response. As I said, the experience of Parma, this is an openness and a welcoming which is born from the war and which remains. And I think we can assure this. So thanks everyone, and we will speak on these various channels in the near future. Thank you very much.
Gondoskodás.
Voivoda.
Care.
Proteger.
Забота.
رعاية. Prendre soin.
Ter atenção.
Sorge tragen. Niaisu.
Cuidar.
Aruga.